These are two GM alternators. This is a stock 105 amp from a 1990 Suburban. This is a 220 amp replacement that's supposed to work on 87, 88 pickups. They have different serpentine systems, so the clocking on the faceplate for these alternators is different. I didn't realize that. This is such a good value on an alternator that I still want to use it. It was I think 120 bucks for a 220 amp alternator. And so what I'm going to do is show you how I'm going to fix the problem I created by taking this faceplate off and putting it on this alternator. We need to take the 3 screws out that hold the faceplate onto the front. Whatever they are, I'm using a 6 mil or a 7 mil. It's not right. I'm sure it's a standard external torque size, but this is going to get them out for me. I think the faceplate clocking is different on the 87, 88 because they had a 2-belt system, and in 89 it swapped over to a single serpentine system, single belt, and so it's just different. And instead of saying, well, why don't you just get them for an alternator, I can't find an alternator for this application that puts out that kind of power for that money. So instead of crying like a baby and sending it back or going back on the search, I'm just going to do what, in my opinion, a real mechanic does and just fucking make it work. And then we're going to have the people that say, well, doesn't that void your warranty? I mean, I guess if you call the guy and say, hey, I swapped the faceplate on this alternator, maybe it will, but if this alternator goes bad and I need to swap it back, I'll swap it back and send it in. Some people are kind of stupid about the warranty thing. So anyway, this is a 15/16 on the front here. I'm going to grab a glove just in case. Those alternator fan fins don't feel good, I'm sure, when they cut your hand open, so I'm just going to... It's not pressed on or anything. They're just sitting in there. So there's that. I'm going to try to knock the front of that off of there. This may be the loud, fun part. Oh, easy. And we're about to find out if this is pressed, and it kind of looks like it is. So this ain't as easy as I thought it was going to be. Alright, so I never disassembled an automotive alternator before. I had no idea how it was going to come apart, and right here we are on camera. I think you saw me yank the stator out of the alternator. But the reason that it didn't come apart is because this was corroded to the bearing. It's not because it was tapered or whatever. I believe that the new one, and we're about to find out together, will slide right off of this shaft. But the old one had rust, and it was rusted to the bearing. So what I did is I just screwed the nut onto it, and I went and I sat it on a 2x4 and smacked it, and it... Then the plate comes right off. This is what we need to put on here. And obviously it has its own bearing, but I'm going to go ahead and take this one apart and see if it comes apart any easier. So, same way for this one. Pull it apart. And yes, I did cheat and get them. I cracked them just to make sure that I wasn't going to fight it for a long time, but they were easy to get loose. So that came off super easy. Looks to me like it's going to slide right off of there. Base plate slid right off. If this bearing slides right on here, we're going to use it. And it does fit. I'm going to clean the inside of the bearing up a little bit off camera here, but it does fit. So we're just going to use the NTN bearing that's in there. And then obviously I won't want to blast. I'll take the bearing out, and then I'll blast this, and then I'll reinstall the bearing. And then when I'm done doing that, I'll come back here and we'll install it back on this alternator in the correct orientation. We'll button it back up and it'll be all ready to use. We're back for the easy part. I showed you the bearing. I pulled the seals out of the NTN bearing and cleaned all the old grease out and re-greased it and resealed it, and then put it back in after I sandblasted the front plate. It's going to last. The NTN bearing is going to last longer than this Chinese bearing. I don't care. Doesn't matter. It's a 30-year-old NTN bearing. It'll outlast it, guaranteed. Especially now that it's been re-greased. So now what I'm going to do is just put this back on. I think I mentioned, but I marked a line on this that's going to line up with the charging post. This tab that's on the charging post. Bearing drops on there nice. Case isn't quite on there. We're going to see if we have to tap that on there. Get it nice and lined up. And it is tapping right on there, fits perfectly. We don't need to tap it on there probably. It could just go to putting these bolts in. Got a stubborn one. I'm reaching out here trying to keep the stuff in view of the camera here. Hope I'm getting a good perspective for you. I'm sure there's a torque spec for this. Maybe there is, maybe there isn't. We're going to call it the old boot and tight. So there's that. Drop your new spacer on. Fan on. Pulley on. Lock washer on. Put your new nut on there. And fucking zip it down. I don't know. 5 Ogadogas. There we go. Complete. 1987-88 alternator ready to put on a 1990 GM. Thanks for coming. I'll let you know when it starts on fire.